Not all of us have a seemingly unlimited scrapbooking stash or a collection of supplies from many years. I have just one small container of supplies, and I try to make layouts from white cardstock and a 6x6 paper pad, and my other supplies are quite limited. But of course, I don't want my pages to look plain. Glitter Girl, can you help?
Of course I can. Today I'm going to take on this minimalist scrapbooking challenge, even though it's not the way I tend to scrapbook today, but we'll see if I can find some sort of happy medium between keeping my supplies to a minimum and still having a page that won't look out of place in my albums. When I first started scrapbooking, I certainly didn't have the amount of supplies that I have now, but I started scrapbooking in 1998, and even if I had only bought a little bit here and there from then to now would be quite a big stash. And let's be honest, I didn't just buy a little bit here and there. I certainly did when I started, and my pages when I first started scrapbooking were, they had no pattern paper, they had no stickers, they were very much just colored cardstock. White cardstock is a difference for me. I'm really drawn to color. I love, love, love color on my pages, and that's just what makes me happy. So I'm going to start with that white background because that's what you specifically asked for, but don't be surprised if there's a lot of color in the end. I am going to stick to that idea of a 6x6 paper pad, and I'm using a True Stories 6x6 that's probably more than half used, so I feel like that is pretty valid to the challenge. I'm not starting with some giant amount of supplies that is never going to end. I've got one 5x7 photo that's from last Easter, and I have Wonder Boy's watercolor paints. I've not brought out any sort of artist grade or even, amateur artist grade watercolors. I wanted to show you that this can work with the cheapest, most basic supplies that you might have on hand. So these are watercolors that are definitely suitable for children, and they come from Tiger, which is a European chain store that's a little bit like the pound store or the dollar store, but just slightly more expensive. Things tend to cost like £2 to £3, and it has a lovely style to it. It's one of those stores where you go in and you think, I don't need anything, and you come out with 20 things that well, you wish you could come out with 20 things that you suddenly decided you need. I tend to come out with at least 3. I don't know that I've ever walked into Tiger and not bought at least something, because you can find something for £1. So anyway, so I'm going to use those. I have a paintbrush just to get the paint wet, but I'm not even going to use a paintbrush. I'm going to use a toddler painting technique. I'm going to use some cling film plastic wrap from my kitchen. I've used it once before with pink paint, so you can see the pink on there, but I'm going to do a different color. There's a lot of red in this photo and just this tiny bit of blue, but I think if I go with red on the background, it's going to look too red and black to feel like an Easter page, and I'd like it to feel a bit springy. So I'm going to start with the blue and see if I can get it pale enough that it will work. I might need to add in green or yellow or something, but I'm going to start with blue. So I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to get my blue paint wet. And because I want the color to be quite pale, I need quite a lot of water, because when you're not using a brush, I'm already getting paint on my white cardstock. Tisk tisk. When you're not using the brush, the color is going to come up more concentrated, because the brush carries more water than a little bit of plastic. So I'm going to put plenty of water on the paint, and then I need to make sure that I keep adding water as I use the paint so that I'm not getting closer to the paint itself and then ending up with really strong color. So it takes a little bit to add that much water. Okay. We'll give it a try. Because I have that big photo, I'm going to start in the middle so I can get the color to what I want, and then I'll work out. And whatever I do here in the middle isn't going to show, because I'm going to put stuff on top. So wow, you can see straight away that that color is really concentrated. So let's put it next to the photo and have a look. And I think now with the red and a really royal blue, that's going to end up looking patriotic. That's going to end up looking red, white, and blue. So, next plan. I'm going to swap the paint around and use the lid so that I can get way more water, way less paint. But this needs a little bit of a rinse. So just get a spot so that I'm not going to get all that cross-contamination. Okay, and now I'm going to transfer my blue over to here, and then I'm going to add lots and lots of water and see if I can get a paler color. So you can see even really inexpensive watercolors have plenty of pigment. You don't need something super expensive to get saturated color. But in this case, I want that springtime pastel-y, softer color. So let's see how much water I can get in here, and let's have another go. There we go. That's looking more like what I had in mind. Okay, so I have my crunched up cling film, and I'm just going to start stamping it around these edges. I'm turning it so that I don't end up with some really obvious pattern where it looks like it was almost a texture stamp that was printed that way. I want to move it around so it just looks a bit more organic and less manufactured. I'm not worried about the middle because I'm going to cover all that up. And because I'm using a 5x7 photo, I probably need to come out closer to the edge than I would think, because I'm used to that 4x6 size, and I'm also used to using my 12x12 papers, and I'm going to use 6x6 papers. Okay, so I'm going to put stuff here, and I'll have this around the edge. Okay, I think that will be plenty. Could also do a spattering technique. You can use bubble wrap, anything like that, but this is one of Wonder Boy's favorite painting techniques, and I just thought it was a great example of how you don't need to do something super fancy. You can do toddler art and it will work. Okay, so I've got my big photo, and while that paint is drying, I'm going to go through my 6x6 pad and pull out the papers that I think would be a good fit. So I just like to have a look at everything that's here. I love color, and I've got that white background, so I want to find some of these patterns that have more color in them. And I have that red in the photo, so it would be nice to pull out something that has some red. If you do have lots of supplies and you're thinking, well, minimal is not really my thing and I don't really need to try and work that way, then don't worry that that you have to stay minimal. Think more along the lines of getting more from your leftovers, and think about, if you have a 6x6 pad that's similar to this one where it's a bit picked over and it has a few things that are left, then maybe this is a great way to get more from those leftovers, and then you can finish that 6x6 pad and get it out. So it's not taking up room, and it's very easy to end up with lots of things in your stash that just have that little bit, and they're taking up the room of a whole 6x6 pad when they really only have 4 or 5 papers left. So, at some point we have to let go. I keep coming back to this turquoise and this aqua, and I'm thinking between that green and this blue, it's just not great. And I think I'm going to go ahead and put this pink in here, but I might just cut out the flowers. The coffee cups are not really the right theme. I can use this for the title and then not have any letter stickers. So that keeps my budget down as well. And I could use that for journaling lines, or I could use the pink. I'm going to tear them all out because whatever I don't use I can still put back in here just to keep it in place. Teacups are not going to work. This could be nice for embellishment. I can cut out the little words that would make sense and not use stickers or something else like that. This is that same color of aqua, but the dots are so small and I think it might read a little bit differently. So I'll go ahead and pull that out. Okay, so I've pulled out as much as I can from my 6x6. And now I'm going to divide them into different things. So I'm going to put the things for the title and the ones I'm thinking I definitely want to use for embellishment and for journaling up here, because those are things I'm not going to use as background layers right behind the photo, which leaves me with these, which I do want to use right behind the photo. Whatever goes against that white background, I want to be a high contrast, so it's not going to be this one. I need to have some things with some brighter color. I have that big yellow box. I have this bold red. So I can start to build around that. Okay, I'm going to cut off all these little perfed edges and then build these together. I like the idea of keeping the red on the same side of the photo that he's in, because I think that then frames him in a portrait fashion, even though the photo is a landscape. So I think I'll bring the yellow to the other side. And bring the red out a little bit more. And this one can go right behind the photo. And then I'm going to need a bit more down here so that I don't have the white against the white. Let me try that pink and see what I think. Oh, actually I quite like that. Okay, so instead of the second yellow, I have the contrast of the pink, and I'm just going to cut the 6x6 so that I can stretch it as if it were a bigger piece of paper. And as much as I am tempted to use ink on all the edges, I was thinking I would use gray ink so it's nice and soft, but also not brown. I didn't want to really age it against the white background. And I'm not going to, because having the ink pads and things like that is a bigger step in your stash collecting. And I do want to make a layout that you can make without lots of specialist supplies or a big budget. So I'm going to leave them uninked. And if you already have ink to hand, then that can help you make the decision of whether you like that look or not. And if you don't, then you know not to do it on your pages. I have lost my blue over here on the side. I'm going to try and get a little bit more. Have I got any paint left in there? Yes, just enough. Okay, it's going to be pretty pale, but I've got a little bit more blue there. And I want to keep my flowers. Still have blue on this side, a little bit there, but quite a lot top and bottom. And I need to cut this one down, so instead of sticking it to the background, I'm going to stick the photo there. And just cut it down so I have a frame that's a good size for these layers. Okay. Now I'm looking at the placement of the photo because I want the red within that red box. And I don't want this to look, I don't want any of my papers to line up exactly. I want them to have a few millimeters of overlap in any direction so that it's always purposeful how they've been placed, and it doesn't look like I tried to get it exactly in line but I missed by a millimeter. If it's off by a couple millimeters, then it looks more purposeful and that was a deliberate choice. Okay. That's enough big layers for the background, and now I need to start putting in some smaller pieces. And I'm going to use embellishment from the paper just like I would use a pack of stickers or die cuts or anything like that. I just decided that this pink needs to come down a little bit. And it's so rare that I use a ruler on my scrapbook pages, but this is one place where I do find it useful if I'm trying to take one piece of paper and stretch it to make it look like a bigger box. Then this is useful. The ruler just helps it, because if I do it by eye, I'm 99% of the time I'm quite happy with what I do by eye, but I'm not pretending at all that it's perfect. And that would be one that I would line up and you would be like, no, that's one box at the top and one box at the bottom. That is in no way one piece of paper. But now, unless you knew that I was working with 6x6 paper, you can believe that that's all one because it is lined up. Okay, so that's why I do it that way. Now, I've got these extra pieces. Now, I don't think I'll use this one because I have the journaling lines on the pink, so I'll just put that aside. And I have these different pieces to use for embellishment. I was going to use this one for my title. Now, it's only the alphabet once, so I need to make sure that I don't duplicate any letters. It means I can't have the title Easter because I only have one E on the page, and I would need two. So I'll have to get a little creative and think about what I'm going to write with the title. So I'll leave that up there. And then I have these to embellish. I could use Delighted as the title. But I'm aware that I've used this piece from the 12 by 12, where it was a bigger piece, as a title within a month or two of this layout in my album. So I think I will try to steer clear of that. I think the balloons could work well as a nice little overlap piece, so I'll try them. This also means that I'm doing an Easter layout without any specific Easter supplies. I haven't pulled out rabbits or eggs or anything like that. A stamp that says Happy Easter. It can be done. It definitely can be done. My eye went to this space here, which is why I put the balloon here, but then I lose the nice bit here at the top, which is every day is special. So maybe it needs to be this direction, which is nice because it pulls the red from this side to here. So now I have this triangle of red, yeah, surrounding the red in the photo. And I have the pink in a vertical line here with the frame and the pink balloon. And I have the yellow on top and underneath. So that's sensible. This piece might make sense. I mean, the sentiment, give it a whirl, makes sense because it's the first time he tried to open an Easter egg. I'll need to cut those edges a bit more carefully, but I think I'll just move it around on the page until I know I'm going to use it or not. And I have this other multicolored one that I'd really like to bring in. I really like cutting this particular print down into horizontal strips. It also works as vertical strips, but I tend to use it on the horizontal. So I'm just going to have a look at the wording on the different lines and pick one that I think will work well on this page. Chose one line and cut off the one that's just partial on the side so that I have complete circles. And then I'm going to cut it down further so that I have 3 in one block and 4 on another. And then I can have one that's on this side and one that's on this side. I'm not sure where this one's going to go yet, but it's going to go over there. And this one's going to go here. This dot brings in that turquoise, and it is a little bit in this floral too. So I think I will go ahead and take my time to cut this little edge. The easiest way to cut tiny little edges like that, instead of using scissors, is I find to use a hole punch. So I'm using the hole punch on the small side of the crocodile, and then I just look through and line it up, and I get pretty close to that line that's printed. It depends on your hole punch collection and how much of a perfectionist you are about the size of the line, but that works well for me. Just be careful if you do use the crocodile that when you're lining up the partial circles, that you don't rest your hand here to try and steady it, because of course when you punch you're then going to close this on your finger. I would not have learned that by experience or anything like that, I promise you. This is another pattern that is definitely a horizontal line kind of design. So I'm choosing one line, it just happens to be the very top line on the paper. And then I'm going to cut this into one piece for over here and one piece for over here. And then I think I might also choose some other phrases from the sheet and cut them into individual phrases rather than lines. But I wanted to start with those little groupings. So I'm starting to get little groups like what I would choose from a sticker sheet or a set of die cuts, so that the same design principles apply. It's just that I'm going through my papers and cutting them myself to keep my budget down and use what I have in that 6x6 pad rather than making an additional purchase. Now, I couldn't go with a title like Easter or Egg because I have that A to Z paper with the letters, and that means I can't have any words that have duplicates. So I'm afraid I had to get some help, and I asked some friends to have a look at the photo and told them a little bit about the story and said, you know, my constraint here is that I can't duplicate any letters, and we came up with golden, which I hadn't thought of at all, and that works really well. So I've started to cut out the letters, and I'm going to cut out each individual letter around the letter itself, so it's shaped like the letter. But I wanted to show you this stage where they're more like tiles, because depending on your title and the space on your page, that might be a better look. But if you can see here that makes it a little bit too big for my page, so I'm going to go with the smaller option. But I had just cut them out into little tiles so they'd be easier for me to cut out, and I thought it might be helpful or might spark something for you to see them as little blocks, because that's just another option. So I'm going to go ahead and cut them out with my scissors, and then I'll have my title and get into my journaling, and everything goes from there. Okay, title cut out, and I'm just going to adhere it with pop dots. And having now cut this title out, I can say this is the same font as a set of thickers in the True Stories collection. They're called Hipster, and they come in black or this same color scheme. And it's a trade-off. The piece of paper is going to save you the money, but it does take time to cut out every letter and then stick it down, whereas the thickers, you open the package and you peel and stick. So it really does depend on your priority. If you have very, very limited time to scrapbook, then your priorities might be that you need to choose a set of letter stickers that you know you can get really good use out of. Choose a set that are going to be really versatile for you and not something you just want to use on one title and then are never going to feel like you could use again. Because they save time, or a set of stamps, likewise, anything that you could use more than once. But stickers, letter stickers are probably the quickest way to make a title. And the paper, cutting out the letters from the paper or cutting them out from just plain cardstock and using scissors to cut them out. It definitely is cheaper than a set of stickers, but it takes more time. So just know your priorities, and then you'll be happy. Okay, journaling's going to go there, and I need to work out these embellishment clusters that I will admit are challenging me a little bit. I'm a little bit intimidated by the idea of doing these without any extra stash. I automatically want to find some chipboard or some enamel dots or something, and I'm going to try to stay as true to the challenge and find a way to do it without extra things that come in packages. I can't even pull out punches or anything. I'm going to have to do it with just scissors, paper, and glue. We'll see what I can do. I think the way I'm going to get over my intimidation is to throw a little bit more paper into this mix so I just have a little bit something more to work with. I had ignored this pattern paper at the beginning when I chose my papers, but since then I've added that color in here. So it's going to be in this grouping, so I could add a little bit of this to this grouping over here. Likewise, this grouping is backed with the yellow, and there's no yellow over here, and I have this block of yellow that I didn't use at the beginning. So I'm going to put those there. Now normally I would use a punch to get maybe a label or a circle shape from these, but I'm not going to use anything like that that's an investment piece like a punch. So instead I'm going to do some things like I'm going to just trace a circle on something that was on the desk, which is a spool of thread, but it could be absolutely anything. It could be tracing around your washi tape, tracing around a coin, whatever you might have. And I'm going to start with one circle of each of those and cut them out and see if that helps me have a little difference to the shapes, because right now I just have lots of rectangles, especially those horizontal ones. And these are going to be very wobbly circles because I'm doing them with scissors and I'm doing them quite quickly. But I find that wobbly is a little bit okay because I'm going to put so many things over the top that I'm really only going to need a little bit of the curve on show so I can adjust the circle so that the best side is the one that you see. And then I have more of these that I can, more of those two patterns that I can add in. So I think this one is the one I'm least intimidated by, so I'm going to start on this side. And that's going to go under there. And then I have these other elements. Now the larger elements are easier to work with first. So I think that one, and I'm doing really small angles, so see most of that yellow circle is hidden already, so that's okay. And then this one maybe with some dimension. I was just looking, do I put it in the middle? So I don't like it down here because this is too repetitive. And then I just have the heavy, darker color at the top. So I think bringing it up to the top is better, and it also means that I can use a small angle but get the arrow so that it's in between his face and the egg. So that's where I want to direct your eye, to this general area here. So if I wanted to do that from here or from here, I need to be pointing it far too steeply. So that looks really wonky, yeah? So if I bring it up here, then my small angle will still work, but I can still have it point to where I want you to look. That's what I'm doing. Right, I'm just going to have to cut some pop dots, I think, because I think these are going to be too big. Nope, just perfect. Okay, so use some foam squares on this one to make it a little different than the others. And of course, I think part of the reason that I'm intimidated with these little groupings is because normally this is my in-between phase. So I add the paper layers, but then, or I suppose it's even the beginning of the layering. I add those pieces, but then I have all these other pieces that I'm going to put on top of it, and I don't have those pieces in my arsenal today. So that makes it a little bit of a challenge. Okay. Let's try, because This one is big. Let's try it about there. I wanted to overlap this on top of the photo, just a little bit. And then maybe this can run right to the edge. Maybe even over the edge a little bit, so that you can still see the strings. Maybe I move this over just the tiniest little bit, so that you can still have the strings, but that I don't lose the word fancy. Okay. And same sort of thing here, that I'll give this one some dimension. And then I'll figure out if there's anything else I can add to these to make them feel a little bit more complete to my eye. Getting there, but this is feeling far too square compared to here, and I have such a harsh horizontal line there. So I think I need another circle like this, but smaller. So I'm just going to grab something else that I can trace, some washi tape, and cut a smaller circle that I could then pop under here. And that is going to work out as a little triangle here, because I have the big one, I have this small one, and I'll have one in between that are all that same color. So where at the beginning I wanted to avoid that color because I felt like it wasn't a match, in the end I'm adding more of that color on purpose, because if I only have a tiny little bit of it, then you're still going to have that first impression that I had, that it doesn't match. But if I add a little bit more of it, it's going to look far more purposeful, and that helps it look like it does match. Okay. But I don't think that's the only thing that's needed there, but it's a start, and now it doesn't feel so horizontal there. I'm not gonna lie, this is feeling very, very intimidating to me. I keep coming back to that word. It's difficult to stay with just these things, because I'm thinking, you know, I could bring in one pack of enamel dots and I could do a lot with that, or I could bring in one roll of washi tape or one stamp. So I think that's part of my advice, is that you find that one thing that for you will make a big difference to the page. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in one washi tape to illustrate that point. So I'm just looking at the washi I have on my desk and choosing which one. I'm going to go with this roll of tape here. So it's that same color there. This is a Bella Boulevard tape. And then I'm going to put this tape in several places. So I'm going to run it up here at the top of the page. I'm going to put it down at the bottom of the page too. And I'm going to put it in the embellishment groupings. Now, of course, I've done that, and now, from habit, I instantly want to take a pack of enamel dots and add something on top. But I'm not going to cheat that much. I'm going to say that my advice is to find one thing. So be that one pack of enamel dots that you can use until every single dot is gone, or one roll of washi tape that coordinates well with lots and lots of your patterns so that you can use it until it's gone, or a set of inexpensive washi tapes if you need to stretch your budget and want more, because they are all different prices. And now I need to figure out how I can work with this in the same way that I would use enamel dots, but without having that actual thing. So I'm going to go back to all those papers, and what I really want to do is to bring in these colors from this paper. Now, I could cut these out by hand, and I could definitely do that, and it would take me a long time, and the circles would all be wonky, but it would be no investment. Or I can use a hole punch, and since I I'm thinking that a hole punch, even if it has to be the one that is the one that you use for your school supplies, your office supplies, just a plain hole punch, that's going to be something that most of us probably have. And maybe if you don't have and you're really, really stuck, then borrow one in the library or borrow one from a friend, and create like a confetti set so that you have a little bowl and it has all your different colors of just circles punched. And then you can use them like enamel dots. So I'm going to go ahead and use that same hole punch that I used earlier and create some confetti that coordinates with my layout, and by using this pattern paper and just punching circles from it. Okay, confetti started to punch, and now I am going to just take each one and roll it onto my adhesive and use it like I would enamel dots. So I'm making little triangles. So I'm going to repeat that with all the different places where I've popped this washi tape. For my absolute last finishing touch, I'm going to add those little blue phrases in 3 different places with some pop dots. So I chose words from the pattern paper that were all things that fit with the story, but they're all from the blue, the darker blue color, because that was a color that wasn't appearing so much over here. There wasn't so much of it over here, and it just felt like that darker, more saturated color would help bring everything together. Now I have this option of going up here or this one, and I'm going to go over here because I'm okay with this at the top being very light and airy, so I don't need as much stuff here basically. Where this one, there's so much of the aqua now that it would be nice to have the blue to mix it up. So I'm going to go with that there. And those form a little triangle, again, around the photo, around the title, around the journaling. And that's where I'm going to finish this one. Now, it's very different, but I hope that by using the embellishment clusters and using a lot of color in my pattern paper, it's something that will still look right in line with the rest of my designs in my album, even though I don't normally use white cardstock for my background. Now, if you look at this and you are somebody that's trying to really scrapbook with limited supplies, and you're thinking, actually, that's way too much pattern paper for one layout for you, then I would suggest looking more at the paint techniques that could allow you to add more color to your backgrounds without having the cost of the paper. Because maybe if I added more color here with my watercolor, or I got a little bit better with my brush and did some of my title, or something a little bit more artistic than just the toddler painting technique, that then I wouldn't need so much of my color and my pattern to come from paper. But if you have a 6x6 pad and this is not a crazy amount of paper to use on your page, then just a little bit of paint on the background will give you that little bit of texture, a little bit more movement, and it feels a little bit more like using a pattern paper for the background, even though it's white cardstock. Thanks so much for the challenge, even though it's been a really, really tough one. If you have a challenge for Glitter Girl, please don't hesitate to leave it in the comments here or on our Facebook chat group, which is called Scrapbook Like a Superhero. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so that you get Glitter Girl's videos sent to you as soon as they are live. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon.